Welcome back. My name is Chris, and in this video, we're going to be taking a look at NetSuite ERP. So first off, what is ERP? ERP stands for Enterprise Resource Planning. And while that term is not very descriptive, basically what ERP is a system that brings together a lot of core business functionalities. So for example, any business will have things like the accounting side or function. They'll have human resource functions. They might have inventory management, CRM. So an ERP will bring all of these various functions together into one software, as opposed to having several different, maybe disconnected softwares that are handling each one of these various functions of the business. So NetSuite is an ERP software, but it's not the only type of ERP software. Specifically, it tends to fit into the small to mid-market niche for ERPs. There's ones that handle much larger companies and organizations, and NetSuite's really in that middle realm. So to take a quick look at NetSuite's history, NetSuite was founded in the late 90s, and it was one of the very first cloud computing software companies ever created. And at that time, it was even referred to as NetLedger because it was basically accounting software. And even to this day, accounting tends to be what NetSuite is strongest at. So fast forward to 2016, NetSuite was then acquired by Oracle. So you'll often hear it referred to as Oracle NetSuite. So why would you as a client want to then transition to software like NetSuite? Well, really, if you started as a company and maybe you were doing your accounting in something like QuickBooks or potentially even just on Excel spreadsheets, there's a certain point as you grow where you outgrow that software and you can no longer have all your transactions and finances going through those systems. So especially if you're looking towards the future and you want a certain software that you can grow with as a company, that's when you start looking at NetSuite as a potential product. But what is the difference between something like NetSuite and some of the other available ERPs? Well, I commented before that NetSuite's niche really is in that small to mid market as opposed to, let's say, SAP or Oracle ERP, which are really intended for those larger companies. So if we were just going to look at NetSuite and really that small to mid market realm, some of the direct competitors in terms of ERP would be things like Microsoft Dynamics 365 or Odoo. And there's a few others, but those are some direct competitors that you could compare back to back with NetSuite. But you also have other ERPs that really fit into a specific industry or tend to specialize and be best at certain specific things. For example, certain services often will rely on Sage as an ERP. Also, if you're dealing with consumer product goods, you might be looking at something like Acumatica. IFS tends to really focus on construction, the construction industry. There's manufacturing and retail. We'll often look at something like Epicor. While if you're looking really, you're heavy into manufacturing, you might even be looking at something like Infor Sightline. So there's a lot of different types of ERPs that really narrow down into one specific thing, whereas NetSuite does cover a lot of bases. It can do all of those different industries and many more very well. So you might, even if you are in one of those industries, you might still be looking at something like NetSuite to fulfill all your needs. Now, before we go any further, I do want to make a mention. If you're finding this video helpful, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe if you're interested in seeing more videos like this. So let's take a look now at what are some of the pros or the strengths of NetSuite. Well, first off, NetSuite's been in the cloud-based ERP world for decades now. So it definitely has the most maturity in that, whereas some other ERPs has really been transitioning over to the cloud just in the last few years. NetSuite's been doing it for years, and it's really a stable product in that realm. NetSuite also, as I mentioned, it really has a lot of great core functionality with accounting and financial. So that's really where it shines. And it does have a lot of other basic processes and workflows that allow it to take that core functionality and scale up as your business grows. An additional thing that NetSuite has going for it is that its third-party application ecosystem is really robust. There's tons of companies that have made software that plugs into NetSuite and either provides functionality that NetSuite doesn't natively have, or it really supports or supplements some of the functionality that it does have. Another common concern that clients have when they're looking for an ERP is if they're going to get a software, they want to make sure that not just it's going to be the most up-to-date when they get it, but that they're going to continue to have the most up-to-date version as time progresses. And that's one of the benefits of NetSuite is the fact that by being on the cloud, and in this case, you're being hosted by Oracle systems, the software gets updated a couple times a year. It just happens automatically. So no matter what, if you get NetSuite, you're going to be operating on the most recent version of NetSuite. You never have to think about it, as opposed to some other software. For example, if you bought Microsoft Dynamics in 2014, you're to some degree locked into that software, and then you have to make the transition to something more up to date or more recent. So you do have that benefit of never having to think about or deal with old versions when you're dealing with NetSuite. And the last positive I want to highlight with NetSuite is the fact that the product out of the box is functioning. So once you get it, you can immediately start interacting with it. It has reporting tools that can start working. They've got dashboards that are already set up. So you can interact with it immediately. That's not to say that the implementation process is instant. You can easily have an implementation timeline that's 9 months to a year. However, the product does come functioning out of the box, as opposed to some other ERP software such as Infor or Epicor, where they take actually considerable configuration just to be able to interact with them at all. So that's just another point to think with. Now, let's take a look at what are some of the negatives or the weaknesses that NetSuite has. And the first one that people are usually aware of is the fact that, and especially for the small market companies, it does tend to be a higher price tag. So as you move into more the mid-market, the prices tend to even out compared to some of the other available ERPs. But if you're a small company and you're looking at NetSuite as opposed to some of the other options, it can be considerably more expensive to purchase that software licensing fee. So I do have a video that you can check out that gives advice and tips on purchasing NetSuite and how to minimize the cost as well as get the most bang for your buck. So be sure to check out that video to make sure that you can mitigate that issue, but it is something to think about when you are transitioning onto NetSuite. One additional aspect to take a look at is if you need really powerful systems, maybe you have tons of transactions, or you need some very robust reporting capabilities that you want to be very rapid, you might want to look at something like Oracle ERP or SAP as opposed to NetSuite. One of the other downsides with NetSuite, or I should say something that it's weak at, is while they do have strengths in terms of accounting and CRM and some other areas, there are certain functions that NetSuite is not strong at, such as human capital management. So if you're dealing with payroll or other employee or human resources type functions, there are other ERPs such as Workday that are stronger in those particular areas. One last point to think with is if you're in certain areas such as government, or you're dealing with military contracts or the healthcare services, there are certain things such as HIPAA compliances that NetSuite can't natively handle those regulations. So while it's not that NetSuite can't do them at all, and I've certainly seen many NetSuite implementations for the healthcare industry, it will require heavier customizations to make those things work. So just to take a look at this from a summary standpoint, the things that NetSuite is very strong at, again, in the small to mid market, it is one of the most popular ERPs available. And it's very strong in accounting. It has a lot of different functionality, a lot of different things that you can do with it. It can scale up to actually very large companies. So a lot of potential there with NetSuite. And the problems that it does have, for example, the financial end of things, the fact that it's a bit more expensive, there are ways to mitigate that, as well as if you're running into limited capabilities, maybe with regulations, again, you're able to make sure that your implementation just has the appropriate customizations needed to make sure that it's still fitting your needs. So if you're taking a look at NetSuite and it seems like a great option for you, check out my video where I give tips on what implementation method you should go with and how to optimize your implementation. And if you found this video helpful, again, please hit the like button, subscribe if you want to see future videos, and if there's a particular subject regarding NetSuite that you'd like me to cover, let me know in the comments below, or even just provide me feedback. It really means a lot to me to know when these videos are helpful for you guys. And with that, I'll see you in the next video.